It's ironic. I'm trying to answer your question. I politely waited, and I even called on you despite the fact that you interrupted me while calling on your colleague. I said it's ironic.
Which is why I interrupted.
I'm trying. It's ironic, Jim, that not only you and the media attack the president for his rhetoric, when they frequently lower the level of conversation in this country. Repeatedly, the media resorts to personal attacks without any content other than to incite anger. I'm here to speak on behalf of the president.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to this free-for-all Friday edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. This is our last 2-hour show, so I say we take advantage of it, make every minute count. Starting on Monday, this program will be trimmed back to 1 hour from 1 to 2, and then you'll hear Stacy on the right from 2 to 3 Central Time. So this is our last 2-hour program, so you guys listen in a hurry. And I'll try to talk in a hurry because that's practice for next week. When we're trimmed down to 1 hour, we'll try to make that count. It's going to be the fastest hour in American media. That is my goal. I want to turn our attention to the Word of God. I always like to begin our program each day, the USS Focal Point. We have nautical charts that we follow, and those nautical charts are found in the Word of God. This is where we navigate by. This is our North Star. I want to just read a little bit of Scripture, and then we are going to pray it back to God. Some beautiful words out of Isaiah 60. Almost don't want to even touch this by trying to explain it because the language is so beautiful. It's so exalted. So I'm going to kind of read through it, try to keep my comments at a minimum, give you a flavor for the elegant poetry, the elegant language in Isaiah 60. And then we want to take opportunity to pray these words back to God for ourselves, for our families, and for our nation. This is how Isaiah begins, Isaiah 60. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples, but the Lord will rise upon you, and his glory will be seen upon you. And nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. Lift up your eyes all around and see. They all gather together, they come to you. Your sons shall come from afar, and your daughter shall be carried on the hip. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and exult, because the abundance of the sea shall be turned to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. So the picture here is really a beautiful picture. It's a picture of the earth enveloped in darkness. It's darkness everywhere. It's gloom everywhere. And then the glory of the Lord rises and it shines on God's people. And the glory of the Lord is seen upon the people of God. And this is the only place on the face of the globe where there is light. You know, as Jesus said to us as his disciples, we are the light of the world. There is no other source of light, spiritual light, illumination in the world other than the people of God, other than the followers of Jesus Christ. And this is kind of the picture that Isaiah paints in Isaiah 60. The people of God have the glory of the Lord, all of his splendor, all of his brilliance, all of his radiance resting upon them, and people from all over the world are coming out of their darkness drawn to the light that they see in this part of the world, where the glory of the Lord has risen upon the people of God. And there's a picture here, I believe, of prodigals coming home. You know, he says, your sons shall come from afar. Where are they coming from? They're coming from a dark place on planet Earth. And they're going to be drawn back to the light, the glory of the Lord that is rested on you. So rich stuff there. Drop down to verse 10. He says, foreigners shall build up your walls, and their kings shall minister to you. For in my wrath I struck you, but in my favor I have had mercy on you. And this is how God works. He strikes us in his wrath. Anytime something bad happens to you, that's God's disciplining hand. Whether you caused it or not, God is using that experience to discipline you for one reason or another, for his purposes. So he strikes us in his anger, in his wrath, at our disobedience, at our rebellion, in order to humble us, in order to stop us in our tracks. And then after he has struck us, he waits to see if we're seeking him, if we have learned the lesson that he wants us to get from this period of adversity, this period of reversal, and then he has mercy on us. His mercy comes to us, and he lifts us up from the place where we have fallen. So it's a good thing to know, because it's very common, I think, for people to think that they have messed up so badly that they're beyond the reach of God's mercy. They're kind of doomed for the rest of life to sort of second-tier status in the kingdom of God. The best they can hope for is to be out on the fringes of God's mercy and grace. And God says, no, after you've learned your lesson, I will have mercy on you. My grace will shine upon you, and I will lift you up. And let's close with this last section of Isaiah 60, and then we will pray. He says this, instead of bronze, I will bring gold to you. Instead of iron, I will bring silver. Instead of wood, bronze. Instead of stones, iron. I will make your overseers peace and your taskmasters righteousness. Violence shall no more be heard in your land, devastation or destruction within your borders. You shall call your walls salvation and your gates praise. The sun shall be no more your light by day, nor for brightness shall the moon give you light, but the Lord will be your everlasting light, and your God will be your glory. Well, let's claim some of these promises in prayer. Lord God, we worship you this day as the Holy One of Israel, our Savior, our Redeemer, and the Mighty One of Jacob. I ask this day for myself, for my family. I ask for the listening audience of Focal Point, for every man, woman, and child right now within the sound of my voice, for every man, woman, and child in this land, including our elected officials, especially our president, President Trump. And I pray, Lord, that you, like the dawn, will rise on us, and that your light will come to us. Even though darkness covers the earth, may your glory rise upon us and be seen over us. I pray that many around us will come, even from afar, to our light and to the brightness of our dawn. May they come to you like doves to their nests, proclaim your praise and honor you as the Lord their God. May this cause our faces to be radiant and our hearts to swell with joy. Even though we may have been forsaken and hated, I pray that you will show us compassion and make us the everlasting pride and joy of all generations. Please make peace our governor and righteousness our ruler. Cause us once again to know that you are our Savior and Redeemer. May this people be a shoot you have planted, the work of your hands for the display of your splendor. I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, I'm reading through the Old Testament now, And I'm coming to places that are named that I see on our Israel tour every March. It's really fascinating to think that Jericho existed way back in the Old Testament thousands of years ago, and I can visit there today. The same can be said for Jerusalem. The Bible literally comes to life when you visit Israel, the Holy Land. Now, we're going in March. My wife Allison and I, we lead these tours every March. So if you would like to go with us, you need to go to the website and check it out. It's twholyland.com, twholyland.com. If you want a brochure sent to your mailbox, just call us at 800-FAMILIES, option 5. That's 800-FAMILIES, option 5, and we'll send you a brochure.
The simple believes everything, but the prudent gives thought to his steps. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Carol Hafner, a Democrat, is running for an Alaska U.S. House seat. But there are a few problems. She doesn't live in the state, has never even visited the state, and she has no plans to go to the state to campaign in person. In a statement to the Associated Press, Hafner said, "Don't lock me out because I'm not a homeboy. You ought to be thankful that I care enough and I'm interested enough and passionate enough to want to make things better." Something tells me the Alaskan people won't take too kindly to the Hafner attitude.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner, or visit the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, welcome back to this free-for-all Friday edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio, our last 2-hour program. Good to have you on board. Don't forget, Monday, Stacy Washington will be with you beginning at 2. Second hour of this, what has been this program, will be devoted to Stacy on the Right. That starts Monday. We'll be on Monday from 1 to 2. Stacy will be on from 2 to 3. Now, good news in the economy, continuing to make progress. 157,000 jobs were added in July, 37,000 in manufacturing, and that's critical because manufacturers, these are the people that actually make things. And that's why anytime you've got job numbers that are growing in the manufacturing sector of the economy, that is very, very good news. Hispanic unemployment now is at a record low. Got a story in the stack about how Trump's popularity has gone up 10 points among Hispanics. He got 29% of the Hispanic vote in 2016, and that number is continuing to grow. The number the support he has in the Hispanic community is continuing to grow. And I've got another, where is that chart? I think a year ago, Donald Trump's support in the African-American community was at 15%. Today, it is at 29%, almost double what it was just a year ago. That's in the African-American community. You know, it was about a year ago or so, I read an article from a pretty smart fella, I forget who it was, but a guy that knows what he's talking about. I've read a lot of his stuff. I don't remember now exactly who it was. But he made the observation, you know, the black community, or the Democrats, let me put it this way, start here, the Democrats have been used to getting 90% of the black vote without having to break a sweat. It's just like automatic. I mean, when Barack Obama ran, he got like 95, 96% of the black vote. But this guy made the observation, if the Democrats can only get 85% of the black vote, if that's the best they can do, they will disappear as a political party. They will just vanish from the political landscape because they are so dependent on 90% of the black community turning out to vote for their candidates. If they don't get that kind of support, they're helpless. And remember, back in 2011, there was a columnist for the New York Times, Thomas Edsel was his name. He wrote a lengthy column and saying, look, what the Democrats are doing is they're giving up on the white vote. They're done trying to get the white vote. They are going to cobble together a coalition of identity groups. This is when identity politics really hit its stride. We're going to cobble together identity groups of Hispanics and females and lesbians and homosexuals and transgenders and African Americans and Latinos. And we are going to cobble this coalition together of all these disparate identity groups, and we're going to make that our business to have them elect us to power. We're going to forget about the white people. We're done with them. We're not going to cater to them. We're not going to go after them. You know, now one of the things we're seeing right now, by the way, is this virulent racism that is directed at white people. That's going to be one of the themes that we are going to pursue today. In fact, I would suggest that the media basically is the anti-white media. The mainstream media, the talking snake media, they hate white people. They hate whites. They are anti-white. They are virulently, hatefully, vigorously hostile and hateful toward people of the white race. So they are as racist as you can get. They hate us because of the color of our skin. And remember, what has always made America distinct, we haven't always lived up to this ideal. We went through the civil rights era and we reclaimed this ideal. Martin Luther King Jr. established the ideal. You know, he asked people to judge his children. I want you to judge my children, but I'm asking you not to do it based on the color of their skin, but based on the content of their character. This is exactly what Jesus said. I want you to judge. You know, people think the only verse in the Bible that Jesus ever spoke was judge not lest you be judged. And Jesus said in John 7:24, he commanded us to judge. I want you to judge, but I do not want you to judge on the basis of appearance, on the surface of things. Well, there's nothing more based on appearance, nothing more surfacey than evaluating people, judging people based on the color of their skin. I mean, this is regressive. I mean, people that are making judgments about people based on the color of a skin, like the left is today and like the media is today, they're taking us backward. That's why I refer to them as regressives. Whites, ladies and gentlemen, are now the new blacks. Whites are the new blacks. Whites are being treated today like blacks in days of old were treated. And it's the mainstream media that's keeping up that narrative and fostering it and feeding it and furthering it. So anyway, that's some of the stuff to get us off and rolling today. We're going to talk to Dan Gainor in the second hour in our customary time, and we'll get some feedback from him about this business of the way whites are being vilified in the media. But while we're doing that, let's deal with some other issues as we are getting our start in the program today. Well, if I can get to my list of stories here, we can do that.
You got plenty to pick from.
Yeah, I do. It's a target-rich environment out there. This is a story for people in the South. This is a Reuters piece, from Austin, Texas. A group of South American lizards that can grow up to 4 feet long has established a home in the Florida wild after being brought to the United States as pets. And then apparently they got a little too big. They started them out in this little terrarium. You know, JD, my son, at one time, he had 6 lizards, 6 tiny little lizards in these little terrariums. Well, if one of those lizards grew to be 4 feet long, I can guarantee you Deb's not going to keep that thing in the house. That baby is gone. So they get these lizards from South America as pets. They get too big and they kick them out into the wild. And these are voracious lizards, and they could expand into an area from the Carolinas to central Texas. Reuters describes them as voracious, omnivorous, predatory lizards. In other words, they're hungry, they eat anything, and they hunt what they eat. So with that encouraging little word to take you into they have strong jaws, They have tails that can wield as thumping weapons. Sounds like miniature dinosaurs, what they sound like. These lizards devour the eggs of American alligators. That's not necessarily all that bad. And the eggs of ground nesting birds. They also have a taste for insects, fruit, and birds. So they're tegu lizards is what they're called, T-E-G-U, tegu. Tegu owners describe their pets as big, calm, and occasionally affectionate. Well, I'm going to take your word for that. I'm not going to get close enough myself to put that theory to the test. They like sunning themselves, and they're not picky about what they eat. Wrote a note in the margin there. They're not picky about what they eat. Yikes.
Yeah.
They're 4 feet long. They have thumping tails, and they don't care what they eat.
Wow. Yeah, the kids aren't going to have trouble.
Did you find a picture of a tegu lizard there?
There's some there.
There's a lady cuddling her tegu lizard. Forget about that noise.
The description sounds like a velociraptor.
Velociraptor, yeah.
There's one laying next to a dog. It's about as big as the dog.
Yeah. Well, you know, and it's my theory that dinosaurs are just lizards that lived for a really, really long time. You know, reptiles, or reptiles, whatever term you want to use, reptiles never stop growing. I mean, reptiles grow to the end of their lives. So you get a lizard that can live 600 years like animals did back in the day. Who knows how big they could get? You got Jurassic World right here. So that's, I think, how we got the size of the dinosaurs that we got. So anyway, look out for those tegu lizards because they are coming. Now here's a piece of good news. There's a force field technology that our military has developed that can make U.S. tanks unstoppable. Force field. This sounds like something out of Star Wars. Like, what did they call that thing? Retractor beam or tractor beam.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, that's pull you in. Well, this is like a deflector, a force field that deflects. Astonishingly futuristic new tech creates a seemingly invisible, impenetrable protective bubble around military armored vehicles, making enemy attempts to fire at U.S. tanks pretty pointless. Those rounds won't hit the tank. They will explode in mid-air.
Wow.
So this technology, it's radar technology, really smart technology. It detects the enemy fire, it locates it, and it launches a response that destroys the threat at a safe distance from the vehicle, say a tank. It can blow up rocket-propelled grenades, anti-tank guided missiles. They're stopped in midair. They're precisely intercepted and prevented from hitting the U.S. military tank. So most types of enemy fire are never even going to reach a tank that's protected with this technology. It's called an active protection system, APS. I'm going to get one of those for my house, just in case these tegu lizards. I mean, we are right in the glide path, according to Reuters. They go from the Carolinas to Texas, man. They're coming right through our yard. So I'm getting me some of this technology for my house.
They would find a way through that force field.
Not if I had anything to say about it.
Lasers.
Yeah, I'll get a laser.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is all radar. So the radar is constantly searching for enemies. Here's how it works. The radar scans the entire perimeter out to its maximum range. When a threat penetrates the monitored area, this technology automatically detects and classifies that threat. So it won't, for instance, launch a missile at a kid that's throwing rocks at the tank. Breathtakingly fast, its super smart computer works out the correct kill point in space to intercept before the weapon can hit the tank. Within milliseconds, Trophy has evaluated whether it's a real threat, sends a warning to the crew and nearby forces, and launches an EFP, explosively formed projectile, to destroy the projectile, intercepts the incoming, collides with it in midair at a safe distance from the vehicle. So that's Russia already has this, and somebody else too. Focal Point, American Family Radio. Be right back.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Earlier this week, I've been telling you about a ministerial to advance religious freedom, a summit convened by the State Department here in Washington, D.C. last week. The summit produced the Potomac Declaration, which you can find in a link on the SES app for today's program. I also said earlier this week that basic religious freedom is one of those rare issues in today's culture on which the overwhelming majority of Americans agree: individual religious liberty. I can tell you that from firsthand experience. I had the privilege of serving on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom from 2001 to 2004 as a presidential appointee, and from 2005 to 2012 as a senatorial appointee. The way the commission is set up, you always have a 5-4 partisan makeup, either 5 Republicans and 4 Democrats if you have a Republican president, or 5 Democrats and 4 Republicans if you have a Democratic president. And yet, while we agreed on virtually nothing domestically, there was virtual unanimity concerning freedom overseas, the freedom of conscience, the right to form one's own beliefs, and to live by those beliefs without interference or persecution by the government. What better way to help bring some unity to our deeply divided country than by giving us the opportunity to work together on behalf of persecuted people of all faiths or of no faith around the globe? What an American thing to do. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
afa.net.
Howdy, and welcome back to this free-for-all Friday edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. And I am your congenial, convivial, and amiable host. Donald Trump met with a group of inner-city pastors at the White House this week. And one pastor there who was present, Reverend Darrell Scott, he's a Cleveland pastor, and he's the co-founder of the President's National Diversity Coalition, said Trump is the most pro-black president that we've had in our lifetime. And again, as we talked about earlier, if the support for the Republican Party among the black community gets up to 15%, the Democratic Party will be toast for a generation. I mean, they're on the verge of what would amount to political extinction if the Republicans can gain just that much leverage. And here's Donald Trump. I mean, the left is trying to eviscerate this guy as a racist. All the time, he's a racist. And here, his popularity is growing in pretty significant jumps among the Hispanic community and among the black community. So the guy obviously is not a racist. There's no evidence for that. There's no proof of that whatsoever.
I think the only demographic that he's actually losing support is with the MS-13, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, most of them are behind bars, so they're not in a position to say much to him. And the rest of them are going to be behind bars if he has anything to do with it. Pew has been doing some research into why people attend church and why they don't. And interesting to see if you can relate to any of this. I'll just kind of pass this on, the information, because it resonates with me. The top reason that most people give for attending church is to become closer to God. Makes perfect sense to me. You want to develop your relationship with God. You want to worship Him. You want to learn from His Word. You want to find out how to cultivate your relationship with Him. 81% of Americans who go to church once or twice a month go for that reason, to become closer to God. 69% go in order to give their children a strong moral foundation. You know, it's interesting to me. I've led cell groups, small groups, house churches, whatever you want to call them, all of my ministry life. I mean, for 40 years now, I've led these small groups. And I've been struck in Boise. I particularly remember one couple in particular, very high-powered professional couple. Both of them were engineers out at Hewlett-Packard, built custom homes out there and all that kind of stuff. And they really had really little, if any, use for God until they adopted kids. These were Korean kids. And they got to talking between the two of them and said, you know, they were nowhere with God. They didn't know God. They didn't know how to have a relationship with God. But said, you know, I think we need to give our kids some kind of moral foundation, some kind of spiritual foundation. Let's look around and see if we can find the best church in town, and let's go there so we can learn about God. And so we can take our kids to Sunday school so they can learn about God. So they wound up selecting our church. We had a very gifted senior pastor at the time, very gifted teacher of the Word. And they wound up in our cell group, and we got to know them and had the privilege of introducing them to God and helping them develop their relationship with God. I mean, there's something about having children and sensing keenly your responsibility to give them a strong moral foundation that drives you back into the arms of God. By the way, we're working, I've talked with you before about the possibility of doing a book with the American Family Association on fatherhood, the Boy to Man book. I want to let you know that that's actually in process. We're working on bringing that book to print even as we speak. Now, 68% of people go to church to become a better person. That's a good motivation. 66% to find comfort in times of trouble or sorrow. Now, the people that didn't go to church, 37% of them said their excuse was that I practice my faith in other ways. 28% said, look, I'm just not a believer. I have no reason to go to church. And 23%, I just haven't found a church or a worship center that I like. So anyway, that's kind of a quick survey where the people are at. Pew said that the number of people who go to church at least once a week has dropped from 39% in 2007 to 35% in 2014. And I know that the number of people that went to church at least once a week has been at 40% all of my adult life. So this is kind of an alarming declension to see it even drop from 39 to 35%, because that represents a whole lot of people. All right, so a quick snapshot of where the American people are at in terms of attending church. I got a column here. This is an interesting story. It's kind of a sad story, but very intriguing. You know, when we were, I'll just introduce it because what I'm going to tell you right now is not nearly as serious as this. When we tried to defend a Ten Commandments monument in the city of Boise, it was in a city park, and they were going to take it out. They tried to do it on the sneak. They put it on a city agenda at the early meeting, not at the regular meeting that people in the community go to, but at their 5 o'clock meeting. Nobody goes to that unless you got an item on the agenda. And we didn't even know this item was on that agenda. Somebody tipped us off at the last minute. So we were able to go to that meeting, that 5 o'clock meeting, and find out what they were planning to do. And they had that monument all marked off to be pulled out of the ground on Friday. And found out that the name of the company, it was a local firm that they were going to have come, a monument firm that puts in headstones and all kind of stuff. They got the equipment to dig the holes and put the stones, the monuments in the ground and all that. Found out the name of the company that had been contracted by the city to remove the monument. So I called them the afternoon of that evening meeting, and I introduced myself, and I said, I know that the city of Boise has contracted with you to remove that Ten Commandments monument, to dig it out of the ground and remove it completely from the city park. And I would just like to issue a request to you that you would consider not doing that because of the significance of the Ten Commandments. And he just kind of laughed. He said, Mr. Fisher, I appreciate you calling, but I want you to know we're actually a little bit ahead of you. We heard about what that job was about, basically because of the ruckus we'd managed to create and the news attention, the thing of that. And we decided this morning we're not going to do it. We're not going to have anything to do with taking the Ten Commandments or the Word of God out of the ground. And so for about 3 days, they could not find anybody in the Treasure Valley to take the 10 Commandments out of the park. So finally, they persuaded some of their own employees to do it, and a lot of them didn't want to do it. So they finally got a cadre, apparently, of raw pagans that work for the city to come and remove the monument. But it was just interesting to me that they just, even these secular companies did not want to do it. Now, this is a story about Leroy Carhart. He's one of the most reprehensible abortionists in the business. There's a lot of third trimester abortions. This is a story out of Dateline Columbus, Ohio. Actually, it has to do with his abortion facility in Bethesda, Maryland. In the month of June, 2 companies canceled their contracts with Leroy Carhart to pick up aborted baby remains. He does third trimester abortions. This is technically, ladies and gentlemen, this is medical waste. That's how babies that have been butchered in the third trimester of a woman's pregnancy and yanked out of the womb, that's how they're classified. They're classified as medical waste. So they get dumped, and somebody's got to come and cart them off to however they dispose of medical waste. And 2 companies in the month of June realized what they were doing. Maybe they saw the baby body parts spilling out of the cardboard containers, but they said, no, we're just not going to do this anymore. Our conscience simply is not going to allow us to do it. And there's a new company that has decided to do a contract with them. The major company in the country, Stericycle, they won't do it anymore. They're not picking up fetal remains anywhere at abortion clinics, anywhere in the United States. They don't want to have anything to do with it. And what reminded me of this, try to get the name of this new company that is going to do it. Biomedical Waste Services of Maryland quit. Biomedical Waste Services quit in June 23rd. And they made a contract with a new company to do it, to start doing it. And they're encouraging people on their mailing list to go ahead and call this abortion company. I didn't bring the second page of the story, which would have that phone number, but encouraging the people that called the first 2 medical waste companies and got them to cancel their contracts to call this third company and to convince them to do it, because once these companies heard from consumers, heard from potential customers about what they were picking up and disposing of, they canceled their contracts as quickly as they could. So it shows the effect that God's people can have when you talk about light. I mean, here's light of the world and salt arresting the spread of decay. When God's people, with God's glory shining on them, when they call these medical waste companies, make them aware of what they're doing, they stop in a New York minute collecting these baby body parts. So that is a story out of Maryland. You know, we've got a piece here by David French, a good writer, excellent writer, National Review Online. And there's a pagan publication called 538. Now, these guys normally, 538, they just do statistical analysis. This is I think the website I had fun following during election night last November, or in 2016, because they started off at the beginning of the evening. We started doing our election coverage. They had Hillary at 95% to win. And as the evening progressed, it was just so funny. As the evening progressed, the projection dropped down to 90% chance to win, down to 80%. And their commentary got shorter and their graphs got smaller. And finally, they just bailed out altogether when they realized that Hillary was going to win. But this 538 is complaining about Catholic hospitals. And they're complaining about how many American communities are dependent on Catholic care and the problem with bishops who shape their health care choices. In a growing number of communities, they say, physicians have access to just one hospital, and in more and more places, that hospital is Catholic. It sounds innocuous, they say, but Catholic hospitals are bound by a range of restrictions that are determined by religious authorities and not by medical authorities, which is why they prohibit abortion. Be right back.
Sometimes we need to smell a pleasing aroma and remember that God is good. He gave us 5 senses, and His provisions come to us through all 5 of those senses to remind us of His goodness.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series, The God You May Not Know, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Caring about the direction our nation is headed is one thing. Doing something about it is another. The Values Voter Summit in Washington, D.C. is the premier gathering for equipping Christian conservatives for returning the culture to one that values human life, encourages families, and defends religious liberty. Plan now to join other values voters on September 21st through the 23rd. Learn more and register at valuesvotersummit.org. valuesvotersummit.org. Sponsored in part by AFA Action.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. Since Hurricane Katrina, 8 Days of Hope has loved and served people in need all over the country. In fact, we've had about 35,000 volunteers travel with us to love and serve people in need. In March, we were in Houston to help out Hurricane Harvey survivors rebuild their homes after the flooding that happened there last fall. Hundreds of thousands of families needed help then, and still today the need is there. We're looking for volunteers to go back with us. 8 Days of Hope 16 will be happening in Southeast Houston, October 13th through October 20th. You can come for 3 days or all 8 days. It's free. We provide the food and lodging. If you can carry drywall, make sandwiches, pick up people from the airport, or deliver materials to the job site, we'd love for you to consider coming with us to Southeast Houston in October. 8 Days of Hope 16, October 13th to October 20th. Come and help us and be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Learn more and sign up to be a part of 8 Days of Hope 16 in Houston, Texas at 8daysofhope.com.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Brian Fisher.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. It's great to have you in this free-for-all Friday discussion. Next hour will be our last second hour, following on the following Monday, this coming Monday, August 6th. We will be going to 1 hour. We'll be on from 1 to 2 Central Time, Monday through Friday. I want to welcome to our Decision Maker line a special guest, J.C. Church. And J.C.'s been involved with a group of pastors in the state of Ohio to take a stand against judicial tyranny and for religious liberty. J.C., welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hey, Brian. It's great to be on the program with you today. We appreciate all that you guys do.
Good to have you with us, J.C., and want to talk a little bit with you about, Ohio has had a lot of good stuff. There are a lot of good conservative groups in the state of Ohio that are very active on the pro-life front, on the pro-family front, and so forth. And now pastors are starting to get engaged, and you were a part of an effort to encourage pastors, mobilize pastors to take a public stand in the state of Ohio. Tell us a little bit about that. What was behind it? What led up to it? And what did these pastors come together to do?
Yeah, sure, Brian. Thanks. We felt a real burden about 10 years ago to start trying to network pastors across Ohio. We called it Awake 88, trying to identify key leading pastors. I literally was thinking, I wonder if there's a Bonhoeffer type in each of the 88 counties. You've got 17,000 churches in 88 counties. And so we just began looking for guys who felt like we really needed to sound the alarm, to have an awakening, to create an alignment so that we could have an action plan in different regions as issues would arise in the coming years and days. Well, little did we know, years later, this has grown into a significant network of churches and pastors. The particular issue at hand that got guys fired up was this issue of judicial tyranny. We had a case in December of 17 where Governor Kasich signed a non-discrimination act outlawing selective abortions performed on children diagnosed with Down syndrome. And what really got us upset was a U.S. District Court judge named Timothy Black struck down Ohio's law. Let's keep in mind that he was a former director of the Planned Parenthood in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was appointed by then-President Barack Obama. And so it upset us because we had 84 legislators who put this piece of legislation forward and turn it into law. And what our listeners need to understand, and this is very important, that in the first 175 years of our republic, we never had the federal government shut down by an inferior federal court. That has happened 22 times in just the first year of the current administration's presidency. And so the point being, to our listeners, if we have the three branches of our government, you have the president and the executive branch that runs the day-to-day operations, if you will, you have the legislative branch and a judicial branch. If we start having a judicial branch that allows their opinions to override the voice and vote of the legislative branch, why have a legislative branch?
Mm-hmm.
So 106 pastors came together. We did a press conference about maybe 9 or 10 weeks ago in Richland County, Ohio, Mansfield, Ohio, where pastors came together and said, enough is enough. And we basically reached out to our legislators and challenged them to take a good, strong look at our Constitution and begin to push back on what we believe is judicial tyranny. If we as people do not do that, we're setting the table for a kingship or a dictatorship if this doesn't go unchecked, if this is left unchecked. So we think we're at a critical time in our nation's history, and a lot is at stake in the next couple of years to try to rein this in. But it was the fact that the legislators basically got overridden by one unelected bureaucrat that was appointed, and it really got the pastors upset. And we found that we were able to reach across denominational parking lots and get understanding. When they got understanding, they said, look, we'll sign this letter, we'll send it to our legislators and say we're not going to put up with this.
Talking here with Pastor J.C. Church. He's the founder and lead pastor of Victory and Truth Ministries. It's a growing multicultural church, birthed in the month of September 1997. And J.C. talking about this stand that these 108 pastors in Ohio took against judicial tyranny, and that's a huge threat. I mean, Thomas Jefferson warned about judicial tyranny back in the 19th century, early part of the 19th century. What would happen if the judges started making law from the bench and ignoring the will of legislators? I mean, that's an oligarchy technically, but that's what we have right now, JC. We've got this unelected oligarchy of little mini tyrants. You know, and you mentioned these district judges. This is what aggravates me. You know, these district judges, I mean, it's the lowest rung on the federal judicial branch. You have district judges, then you have appeals court judges, and then you have the Supreme Court. So district, I mean, I'm not taking anything away from them, but they are the lowest rung on the ladder. And when Donald Trump was delivering these travel bans to protect us from jihadists, you had these district judges, like you were talking about, who had the effrontery, the temerity, I mean, the hubris to think that they could dictate immigration policy to the President of the United States. You had district judges in San Francisco, district judges in Honolulu, presuming to establish immigration policy for the entire United States of America. There's nowhere in the Constitution that they have that kind of authority. So that's an illustration, JC, of the kind of judicial tyranny that we're really up against here.
Well, absolutely. And for those who are ill-informed or uninformed, we need to get informed. We better be proactive and not reactive before we're rendered inactive. And when we look at the Constitution, Article 3, Section 1 makes it very clear that every judge that you're talking about is really not there to serve for life, but rather, quote-unquote, during good behavior. The same section says that these courts serve from time to time as Congress ordains and establishes. But our challenge is if we don't have legislators with deep conviction that understand the Constitution, that have character and integrity, how can they determine the good behavior, quote-unquote, of these judges? And our founders had to be God breathing upon them to establish such checks and balances. And if we lose the checks and balances, we're heading down a path we may never get back. We desperately need to properly educate our people. And let me throw one other thing in that happened, in Ohio that has, I guess, fostered or come out of this atmosphere of this judicial tyranny, and that is this. We had a case in Cincinnati where a minor child wanted to go through hormone therapy, and the parents had them as a family. They were looking at the Bible, reading scriptures. Well, we had a case down near Cincinnati, Ohio, that Sylvia Hendon, a judge, when she found out about this, sent children's services to this child and had the child removed. The child was given, the custody was given to the grandparents who are taking this minor child to get the hormone therapy. And so we have the judges that have come in and removed a child from a family of faith. And here's the part that moves further in terms of the mindset that we're seeing created. This judge has asked the Ohio State legislators to, quote-unquote, craft legislation to give the juvenile courts the framework to evaluate a minor's rights to gender therapy. In other words, our listeners need to listen. We now have a judge who's making a decision overriding parental authority and physically removing a minor child from the home. If we allow judicial tyranny and people to buy into the thought that these unelected bureaucrats can give their opinions to override the vote of the people, why do we have a legislative branch? Our legislators are the voice of the people they serve, and 84 of our legislators passed this particular bill that we started talking about that our governor signed in December of 17. Why have these elected officials do their job if you're going to have somebody at this lower level override? And let's put in mind, as you say, that when they issue these injunctions, they have stopped the federal government from enforcing executive branch policy or statutes given by the president. This is historic, and we need to reverse this.
Well, you know, and historically, I mean, Thomas Jefferson said each branch of the government has the right to decide what the Constitution means in its own sphere of responsibility. So, you know, but you look at Article 3, JC, about what the Constitution says courts can and cannot do. It's very clear the courts have a responsibility to decide cases. That means they will render a ruling for the people that are in front of them, but it doesn't apply across the board to everybody in the country. You know, right now we've gotten this bad habit of thinking the Supreme Court issues a ruling, that becomes the law of the land. There's no basis for that in the Constitution. And when you look here, JC, at a judge believing that he can usurp the authority of parents in a minor's life, I mean, this is grotesque. You know, this is obscene to a spectacular degree. I mean, you look at the transition from being normal heterosexual to going through transgender, the hormones, the therapy, the possible surgery. In some cases, you can get far enough down that track, there's no coming back from that. It's non-reversible when you get to a certain point. And so this minor's having a decision made by a judge that may warp them for life. The parents are left to deal with the fallout from that, but the judge is off into retirement on his pension. Last word, JC, got about 20 seconds.
Well, it's time that I hope parents, whether they serve the Lord or don't serve the Lord, wake up and realize just the overreach. This overreach must stop, and I would challenge our listeners, we need to do two things. We need to organize and we need to mobilize. We need to get involved in this process, let our voice be heard. That's what we're trying to do in Ohio, and we'll continue to do so as spiritual leaders in this state. So we appreciate all that you're doing.
Our guest has been J.C. Church. He's the founder and lead pastor of Victory in Truth Ministries there in the state of Ohio. J.C., thank you for taking time out to chat with us today, and thank you for your leadership with the pastors there in the state of Ohio, bringing them together in order to take a stand against judicial tyranny. God bless you, my friend, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. We'll talk with you again soon. God bless you.
God bless you. J.C. Church from the state of Ohio, pastors taking a stand against judicial tyranny. We'll be right back with hour number 2. Don't go anywhere.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
As millennials, we have more than $1 trillion in purchasing power, so you know businesses are watching us. But millennials are losing our faith, so we know Satan is watching us. Engage Magazine is for millennials by millennials, and it speaks to faith, purpose, and a closer walk with Jesus. Because above all, God is watching us. Visit engagemagazine.net and listen Saturday afternoons at 5:30 Central on AFR.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. There's still no sign of a missing 20-year-old Iowa college student. Jeff Manasso has the latest.
The latest update from Iowa that dozens of investigators, thousands of volunteers working hundreds of man-hours in the third week of searching for 20-year-old Molly Tibbetts. And nothing.
It's frustrating for everybody. It's frustrating for the investigative team. It's frustrating for us, and it's particularly frustrating for the family and friends of Molly.
Iowa Department of Public Safety's Kevin Winker says investigators are searching by ground and air in hundreds of leads. Molly Tibbetts was last seen jogging July 18th in Brooklyn, Iowa. The family hoping the massive reward being offered will incentivize the right tip that could blow this case wide open. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
A border enforcement group says it is outrageous that the same Democrats who are opposed to a citizenship question on the next census form are demanding questions about sexual orientation be included. Chad Groening has more.
Democrats became apoplectic when Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross announced that the 2020 census would include a question about citizenship. And led by California Attorney General Javier Becerra, Democrats filed a lawsuit aimed at blocking the Census Bureau from including a question on citizenship. And Senate Democrats demanded hearings on the matter. But some of those same Democrats are pushing passage of the Census Equality Act to include questions related to sexual orientation and gender identity to the next census. Ira Melman is a spokesman for the Federation for American Immigration Reform. He says it's all about politics.
There are a lot of people in this country who don't want us to know just how many people are living in the country who are not citizens because it doesn't serve their political goals. Likewise, the people who are introducing the idea that including questions about gender identity and sexual orientation is a good idea, they are doing it for political reasons. We should be collecting information that is valuable to the country regardless of politics.
Melman is confident the citizenship question will remain on the 2020 census form.
The people who are challenging it are challenging whether some of the statements he made during his campaign unfairly politicized this. Given the fact that we've had these questions on past censuses, there doesn't seem to be any real question whether it's constitutional to ask people simply whether they're a citizen or not a citizen. It is all based on the president said during the campaign, and that became irrelevant when he became president.
I'm Chad Groening.
An education analyst is calling on Education Secretary Betsy DeVos to do away with an Obama-era regulation that controls school discipline. Bob Kellogg has more.
President Obama's administration issued a Dear Colleague letter on school safety and student discipline in 2014, taking most control away from local schools. Policy analyst Jonathan Butcher of the Heritage Foundation hopes Secretary DeVos will completely rescind the regulation.
That is not Washington's place. It is not something that Washington should be involved in. It's well beyond the scope of the Department of Education.
He says the regulation not only did not prevent the massacre at the Parkland, Florida high school last February, but may actually have contributed to it.
Their school discipline policies mirror what is in this federal Dear Colleague letter. And we know now that the alleged shooter was actually referred to the district's intervention program dealing with student discipline, and it failed to prevent the tragedy.
Butcher says a compromise suggested by the Fordham Institute of removing just one portion of the regulation means federal bureaucrats would still be in control. I'm Bob Kellogg.
And the government says U.S. employers added 157,000 jobs in July, a solid gain, but below the pace of the first half of this year. The Labor Department says the unemployment rate ticked down to 3.9%, near the 18-year low of 3.8% reached in May. Average hourly pay gains remained modest, increasing 2.7% from a year earlier, the same as the two previous months. American Family News is available online at onenewsnow.com, on Facebook and Twitter, and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Women and men alike find themselves in despair after an abortion. Every woman who had an abortion was for a short time a mother, every man a father. But afterwards, they're all people in pain, anger, sadness, relationship problems. These often accompany an abortion. But there is hope. Call 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who has already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
The media has attacked me personally on a number of occasions, including your own network, said I should be harassed as a life sentence, that I should be choked.
Not the enemy of the people. I think we deserve that.
I think the president has made his position known. I also think it's ironic. I'm trying to answer your question.
Okay, well,
I politely waited, and I even called on you despite the fact that you interrupted me while calling on your colleague. I said it's ironic.
Which is why I interrupted.
I'm trying. It's ironic, Jim, that not only you and the media attack the president for his rhetoric, when they frequently lower the level of conversation in this country. Repeatedly, the media resorts to personal attacks without any content other than to incite anger. I'm here to speak on behalf of the president.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome back to the last second hour of Focal Point. After 9 years being on for 2 hours, we'll be down to 1 starting on Monday. Second hour, this time on Monday, you'll be listening to Stacey Washington. Stacey on the Right is the name of her program. It's Free for All Friday, so when we get the phone calls at the bottom of the hour, we will let you talk about anything that has been in the news over the course of this past week. Now, let me see where we ought to get a soundbite or two into the mix. Why don't we just start with this long interaction between Jim Acosta and Sarah Sanders. I couldn't find a place to cut this thing, so this is almost 3 minutes. But I wanted you to hear the whole thing. You've probably seen snippets on the news, but we have the luxury of giving you the whole 2 minutes and 51 seconds, the entire exchange between Jim Acosta, whom I refer to Jim, who acts like a jerk Acosta, and Sarah Sanders as the president's press secretary. And so here's how it starts. Jim Acosta wanted to press Sarah Sanders on Ivanka Trump's statement that the press is not the enemy of the people. Here's how it starts.
The press is not the enemy of the people. And she asked you whether or not the press is the enemy of the people. You read off a laundry list of your concerns about the press and things that you feel like are misreported, but you did not say that the press is not the enemy of the people. And I think it would be a good thing if you were to say right here at this briefing that the press, the people who are gathered in this room right now, doing their jobs every day, asking questions of officials like the ones you brought forward earlier, are not the enemy of the people. I think we deserve that.
I think the president has made his position known. I also think it's ironic.
Would you mind telling us,
I'm trying to answer your question.
Okay, well,
I politely waited, and I even called on you despite the fact that you interrupted me while calling on your colleague. I said it's ironic.
Which is why I interrupted.
I'm trying.
But if you finish, if you would not mind letting me have a follow-up, that would be fine. But
it's ironic, Jim, that not only you and the media attack the president for his rhetoric, when they frequently lower the level of conversation in this country. Repeatedly, the media resorts to personal attacks without any content other than to incite anger. The media has attacked me personally on a number of occasions, including your own network, said I should be harassed as a life sentence, that I should be choked. ICE officials are not welcomed in their place of worship, and personal information is shared on the internet. When I was hosted by the Correspondents Association, of which almost all of you are members of, you brought a comedian up to attack my appearance and call me a traitor to my own gender. In fact, as I know, as far as I know, I'm the first press secretary in the history of the United States that's required Secret Service protection. The media continues to ratchet up the verbal assault against the president and everyone in this administration, and certainly we have a role to play, but the media has a role to play for the discourse in this country as well.
And sir, if you don't mind, if I may follow up, excuse me, you did not say in the course of those remarks that you just made that the press is not the enemy of the people? Are we to take it from what you just said? We all get put through the ringer. We all get put in the meat grinder in this town, and you're no exception. And I'm sorry that that happened to you. I wish that that had not happened. But for the sake of this room, the people who are in this room, this democracy, this country, all the people around the world are watching what you're saying, Sarah, and the White House for the United States of America, the President of the United States should not refer to us as the enemy of the people. His own daughter acknowledges that, and all I'm asking you to do, Sarah, is to acknowledge that right now and right here.
I appreciate your passion. I share it. I've addressed this question. I've addressed my personal feelings. I'm here to speak on behalf of the President. He's made his comments clear.
You know, it's interesting to me, you know, you hear Jim Acosta, I mean, he's pressing for one thing. From the first thing he says to the last thing he says, he is intent on getting Sarah Sanders to say the press is not the enemy of the people.
Yep.
That's the only thing he cares about. Now, what I learned, I haven't had much interaction with the press in the last few years, but what I learned in doing interviews with the talking snake media, you occasionally will run into them, and you can tell by the questions they ask, there is something that they want you to say. There's a question that they want you to answer yes or no, and they will press you on that, and they will keep coming back to that. And what I have learned, if there is an answer that the talking snake media is pressing you to give them, the one thing you know is you cannot give them that answer. No matter what the answer is, if they're pressing for it, if they're intent on it, then it's a trap. They're going to use it against you. You know, you might, next time you read through the Gospels, kind of take a look at how Jesus responded to the scribes and the Pharisees. There were a lot of times where he did not give them a direct answer to their questions. He would not answer the question that they were asking him, even though he could have. And remember, the gospel writer said that they were trying to trap him in something that he might say. That's a direct quote out of the Gospel of Luke. They were trying to trap him or to catch him in something that he might say. So good for Sarah Sanders. She spotted what was going on here and did not fall for it.
And as a follow-up on this, the Washington Post did a fact-checking on what Sarah Sanders said, and they're saying that this is how the depth of hair splitting they're doing.
This is a fact check.
Yes.
I mean, the Washington Post is saying, as a journalism, as one of the leading institutes of journalism in the country, we're going to fact check Sarah Sanders' response.
Yeah, specifically when she said that they want, the CNN or news agencies asked for them to choke her. It felt like choking her, and they fact checked that and said that wasn't true at all. She's lying. They said wring her neck. Also on.
Good.
Also about harassing her for life. They said no, they never said that. They said Sarah Huckabee has no right to live a life of no fuss and no muss. No, she didn't actually use the word harass.
Man. Well, so that just shows you just how juvenile. I mean, they're fact-checking and saying that she told a lie because she said choked instead of wring her neck. Yeah. So that's just crazy stuff, and obviously they got no legitimacy at all. But that's kind of a, it's an indication they got stung pretty good on this because they felt like they had to defend themselves, and their conduct is just indefensible. Now, when we come back, we're going to have Dan Gainor with us, as we customarily do on Fridays, and we'll break down some more stuff that's been going on in the media over the course of this past week. Just want to mention this. I have a column that is up at afa.net. It's called "The Pope is Wrong on the Death Penalty." The Pope is wrong on the death penalty. And I look at Scripture pretty carefully and try to give a biblical view of what the Bible teaches about capital punishment, about execution for murder. Encourage you to read it. The Pope is Wrong on the Death Penalty, afa.net. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Are you a responsible person who finds yourself growing deeper and deeper in credit card debt and you're not sure how to fix the problem? Then get ready for a toll-free number that will put you on a path to financial recovery. Trinity Debt Management is a nonprofit organization that will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, and reduce your interest rates by as much as 60%. You'll save thousands and become debt-free for keeps. It's not a loan. It's a smart way to relieve your stress, meet your obligations, and preserve your self-respect. If your debt has you down, we should talk. Gather up your bills and call this toll-free number for a free, no-obligation debt analysis. 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813. If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
What if I told you that you could clean your family's laundry and help reach the next generation at the same time? That opportunity is here through a company called Redeem Clean. Every time you use Redeem Clean products, you help support the ministry of the American Family Association. In addition to your regular AFA giving, Redeem Clean laundry detergent allows you to increase your support of AFA just by continuing to wash your family's clothes. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made in the USA. And they were developed exclusively for the support of the American Family Association. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more, find options, and order Redeem Clean products at afastore.net. That's afastore.net.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, and amiable as always. Honored as is our custom to welcome to our decision maker line Dan Gainor, Vice President for Business and Culture at the Media Research Center. We're used to having Dan on Fridays in this second hour. Now we'll probably be going to kind of an as-needed basis with Dan since we'll be cutting the program back to 1 hour starting on Monday, but we expect to have Dan back as a frequent guest on this program. Dan, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, whether it's every single week or almost every single week.
All right. Well, you know, and fortunately, Dan, for both you and me, it's a target-rich environment out there when you're looking at misconduct on the part of the media. Now, I've got a couple of sound bites I want to play for you, but I want to talk first of all about this New York Times business. This is amazing stuff. You know, I got a column from National Review Online that anti-white racism is possible, and I think that's what we're seeing with the New York Times. Explain that to us.
Well, what New York Times did, and this is an organization, by the way, that underemploys people of color. According to their own diversity statistics, New York Times only employs 28% people of color, so 72% white people in a nation of 62% white people. So the press is liberal and white and urban. Only 20% of the New York Times leadership is white. I mean, it's people of color. So they're bend over backwards to adding people of color to their editorial board, etc. So they add this tech writer, Sarah Gian, without doing any due diligence on her, looking at her tweets where she hates the police and hates all sorts of things. But where she really excels is what the left is now classifying as counter-trolling. So a lot of people get attacked on Twitter. Lord knows, I think you and I do. So she got attacked, and so her responses were, I'm going to have to really heavily edit these, her responses were to bash white people. Are white people genetically predisposed to burn faster in the sun, thus logically being only fit to live underground like groveling goblins? And then blankety, blankety, blank, white people marking up the Internet with their opinions like dogs. Well, I'll use another word, urinating on fire hydrants. Oh, man, it's kind of sick how much joy I get out of being cruel to old white men. And, white people are BS. You can threaten anyone on the internet except cops. It just goes on and on.
Even got a hashtag, Dan, looking at the publication you guys, the research you guys did on this. The hashtag is
white people.
Cancel white people. So you would think, if modern tendencies would be any indication, she would have been cashiered immediately for the inexcusable nature of these tweets. But the New York Times, Dan, didn't do that.
No, the New York Times defended her because, of course, this rule only applies one way. If you're liberal, you can say absolutely anything, but particularly you can say absolutely anything about white people. That's just the way it is. Now, you remember Joy Reid. Joy Reid got away with saying absolutely anything, even about gay people. They dug through her past. So if you are particularly somebody that the left has designated as in a victim group, then they're going to protect you. And no matter what you did, it's okay. But if you're not in a victim group, you tweet wrong, you do something wrong, then the world is out for you. It's amazing that these tweets are still on Twitter. We're still on Twitter, and that she didn't mind them. And then, of course, like I said, the journalism world unifies. And here's the interesting thing. I think this really helps the right, because this proves that, what I've been saying for years, that there's really there's no double standard. There's only one standard. Everything left is right, and everything right is wrong. So that's the standard the media stick to, and they will keep sticking to no matter how much we complain.
It's interesting, Dan, you look at this business about racism can exist on both sides of the racial divide, if you want to use that term. But, we're seeing this virulent racism right now in South Africa, where an amendment to their constitution is being proposed that would allow for people to have their farms stolen from them with no compensation if they happen to be of the wrong skin color. We're seeing more and more graduation ceremonies where people are insisting that only people of a certain skin color can come to this graduation, or if it's the beginning of the school year, to this orientation ceremony. And now you have someone who is plainly racist working for the New York Times, and they are defending this racism rather than criticizing it and giving her walking papers.
Yeah, and I think we can only expect to see more and more of this. If you see, ever search the hashtag white people, or just search the term white people on Twitter, you'll be astonished at what's allowed. You'll be astonished at the hate groups that you find on Facebook for white people and such. What the left wants has never been equality. If you go back, look at the LGBT community. We want tolerance. Then we want acceptance. Then we want celebration. Then we want mandated celebration, where if you don't celebrate a gay marriage, you're going to be destroyed. And what they essentially want is priority. They want gay rights, which are not in the Constitution, to overrule religious rights, which are. What the left is looking to do is do the complete turn the world upside down, where anybody who was in power gets demoted and everybody else who wasn't in power gets put in power. They don't want equality. They never have. What they want is superiority. Mandated superiority, government-mandated superiority.
I want to play a couple of sound bites, Dan, with your indulgence, from Sean Hannity, talking about Acosta. We have played the exchange between Sarah Sanders and Jim Acosta in the last segment, Dan, and I know you are familiar with that. And here's Sean Hannity talking. He addresses his comments actually here to Jim Acosta in the first clip that we are going to play. And I think most of us, Dan, would agree with what Sean Hannity is saying here. When I grew up, everybody on the playground knew the expression, I may disagree with what you say, but I will fight to the death to defend your right to say it. And as you pointed out, that mentality does not exist on the left, but it does on the right. Here's Sean Hannity.
Jim, I'm a pretty prominent conservative in the country. Let me say this clearly and loudly. I want every journalist in this country, everyone, I don't care who you work for, to be safe. And I'll tell you right now, I will be the first person to come to your defense if I'm there and anyone ever dares lay a hand on you. If I was standing there, if I see it happen, I will be the first person to jump in and fight on your behalf. Physical violence is never acceptable to me, nor is it acceptable to the conservatives I know and respect. And let me also be clear. If you're a conservative, and by the way, you ever threaten anyone, you're not a friend of mine, you're not a friend of this program. And by the way, or the conservative movement of which I'm just a small part of. Now, Jim, I have a question. Did you ever pick up the phone? Did you call Sarah Sanders? Did you call Pam Bondi, the Secretary of State in Florida? Did you call Secretary Nielsen after they were run out of places publicly in a violent, what looked like could become a violent situation? If you did, by the way, good for you.
But I don't know if there's an answer to that question, Dan. And my guess, I want to play one more soundbite, but give me your quick take on what Sean Hannity says there.
Well, I think Sean takes the right and moral position that the left, the left thinks that violence is okay. They think it's okay to punch a Nazi. And, oh, by the way, they think anyone who voted for Donald Trump or disagrees with them on any issue is a Nazi. And the conservatives, it's not the conservative position. And, if you want to get the violence, well, I don't think we intend to start it, but I think we might intend to finish it.
Now, the second clip is Sean Hannity talking with Sean Spicer, former spokesman for the president, about the Jim Acosta interview and the same subject. Let's listen.
I don't remember Jim Acosta as the great champion standing up for the first family or calling them. I'd love to know if he ever called them and said, I'm so sorry what you've been through.
Well, Sean, look, I'm on a book tour right now, and they love playing clips about me getting heckled and intimidated. They think it's funny and amusing. So, look, I would associate my comments with your opening monologue. We have a country that allows people to express themselves freely, and that's what makes our country great. But at the same time, I agree with you. We need a free and fair press that is robust, but it should never, ever be under attack with intimidation or violence. If Jim Acosta has a problem with some of the ability of people to express themselves, he should look at his own unprofessional and disrespectful behavior, look in the mirror and wonder whether he's part of the problem. We should never be threatening anybody with violence.
You know, it's interesting, too, Dan, the way Jim Acosta responded to this. This, in essence, is Sean Hannity laying out what I believe is a completely unobjectionable approach to these matters. And I think Jim Acosta put a tweet out calling Sean Hannity's program poison.
Yes, he's poisoning the national conversation, etc. Look, anybody who watches CNN for a day knows that it is no longer a news network that exists solely for one reason, that's to take down the President of the United States and anybody who's on his team. And Jim Acosta, Brian Karem, April Ryan, their sort of White House press group, are fond of showing off and acting out, etc. They have a constitutional right to do that. We also have a constitutional right to criticize them. So when CNN stinks and a bunch of people get up and chant, CNN and a euphemism for stinks that I won't use, when they chant that in a crowd, and CNN gets offended, then maybe the solution is CNN should stink less. CNN should be more neutral. CNN should try to do better journalism, try to cover things in a neutral, nonpartisan way instead of basically serving as the headquarters for the resistance.
I got a question about this, or a comment, observation maybe, Dan, and we just have a little bit of time left here, half a minute or so. But I noticed when Jim Acosta was standing at that rally and everybody, all the Trump people were around him, Jim Acosta is trying to create the impression this is dangerous, it's volatile, people are going to get hurt, this kind of rhetoric is terrible, it's going to endanger journalists. But he's standing there, obviously, without any fear of the supporters of Donald Trump. He knows he has nothing to fear from them. So it's just all empty, inflammatory rhetoric.
Yeah, he's a diva. And you can tell it in the press room, you can tell him out there. With Sean, I don't want anybody to be hurt, but I don't want anybody's rights to free speech taken away either.
All right, Dan Gainor has been our guest. We will talk to him again on this program. He's Vice President for Business and Culture at the Media Research Center. Dan, as always, a pleasure to chat with you. Hope you have a terrific weekend, my friend. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you as well. Bye.
Hi, I'm Will Addison.
And I'm Miki.
From Airing the Addisons on Urban Family Talk.
We'd like to invite you to the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference coming up August 17th and 18th.
The list of speakers is amazing. We have Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Clarence Schuler of Building Lasting Relationships, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Bert Harper and his wife Jan, Stacy Washington, Lonnie Poindexter, Pastor Dexter Sanders, and we'll be there too.
There's a direct attack by the enemy on marriage and family, and babies in the womb are treated like political footballs instead of life. We want to encourage and equip the body of Christ to fight for the restoration of the family. If we can get our families on track, a lot of society's problems could be solved. The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference is from Urban Family Communications, a division of the American Family Association. You can learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Here on American Family Radio, this is David Wolin with Haven Ministries, inviting you to anchor your day in God's Word. Wherever you are right now, stuck on a freeway or sitting at a desk, take a moment, look out at God's creation. It's speaking. It's telling you that God is there, and it's inviting you to seek Him. Romans chapter 1 says, "Since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." But there's a limit to what creation can tell you. To know God truly, you have to go to His Word. And if you do that, you'll find all of it pointing to the one who said He has revealed the Father. An Anchor devotional can help you get to know Jesus a little better each day. Try it out. Just visit getanchor.com.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Here's the polling data from Rasmussen. Donald Trump's approval ratings today among black voters, his approval rating is at 29%, the same time last year at 15%. So he's doubled his support among African Americans. Now, we've talked here about who really needs to fear violence. Is it people on the left or is it people on the right? And it's my contention that the only people that have any violence to fear are people on the right. You know, we saw last year Steve Scalise got shot, very nearly killed, at a baseball practice by this WaPo guy that was a far leftist. And now another man, a man from New York, has been arrested for leaving threatening voicemails for Steve Scalise. Again, a year plus after he was shot, another guy is out there calling him and leaving threatening messages with him. It was investigated, and the FBI found evidence from this guy's home, the guy that called him, suggesting that the threats may have been credible. Wow. So, again, here's Steve Scalise. He's on the right. He's being threatened again after being shot at last year. And, Jeff, you were telling me about a little noticed story. This may be an indication, too, of something, how little attention this story has gotten in the media about the president and this rally that he had in Pennsylvania last night.
Yeah, actually, I didn't even really believe it at first because I searched the web trying to find more information on this story, and there's nothing out there, really. I had to go to a local station in Pennsylvania. The president was there just speaking at a rally in support of somebody there, and a man had driven from Oklahoma to there, actually, we have a soundbite with the details, but basically went there to kill the president. And I haven't found it. I really had to do some search for this.
And he actually got to the venue where the president was.
I'm not sure if he made it there.
But that's where he was headed, and he at least got close.
Yes, and the police caught him with guns and ammunition and everything. But
can you imagine kind of coverage this would have gotten if it was a Tea Party guy did that with Obama?
Exactly.
So we have a little news clip to...
We do.
Okay, let's listen.
An Oklahoma man is charged with making terroristic threats against President Trump and his family. State police say 55-year-old Jeffrey Boyd showed up to a woman's home in Berwick, Columbia County. She told troopers he said he was hearing voices that told him to kill President Trump, Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Jared Kushner. Officers found 2 loaded guns in his car along with extra ammunition, and Boyd is locked up tonight on $1 million bail.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
You know, and nothing.
Nothing
I mean, I assume that was an Oklahoma news station. I don't know.
No, that was actually Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So kind of local news, and that's they're treating it entirely as a local news event.
I was on all the nets and everything all day today doing clips. I didn't see anything about that. Nothing
about that.
Yeah, the only way I came across it, somebody had taken a picture of a newspaper in Pennsylvania, and I was like, anybody can like Photoshop a title on a news story. So I started looking and digging as much as I could. Started searching the internet for his name and all that stuff. Nothing really came up until I found this local station that had had that. That is amazing.
Yeah,
that should be. People should know about that.
Yeah, I mean, it blows me away that I did not hear about that. You know, in the work I did this morning. Now let's go to clip number 2. This is Nicole Wallace. Now Nicole Wallace used to be in the Bush administration. She was like a spokesman type for the Bush administration, for President Bush, and now Nicole Wallace going after Sarah Sanders. And, you know, Sarah Sanders, I mean, whatever you think about her, Sarah Sanders has never hurt a living soul in her entire life. And she's responded to so much garbage being thrown at her. She's always responded with civility and strength and resilience. Nothing but admiration for this woman. But here's how Nicole Wallace is reacting to her this morning.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked about this in today's briefing. Her first answer was a recounting of the responsibilities of the press. So they tried again.
Look, does the White House support that or not?
While we certainly support freedom of the press, we also support freedom of speech, and we think that those things go hand in hand.
Joining us now, New York Times chief White. You know, we're not going to air that anymore. Let's make that the last Sarah Huckabee Sanders clip ever aired at 4 o'clock. Yeah, that's it. You know what? That makes me sweat. That is vile. Well,
and the previous answer.
That made me sweat.
The previous answer
this
that we didn't.
This is someone who complains about a restaurant that exercises their First Amendment right to kick out someone that they think is obliterating democratic norms. I seriously, that made me sweat.
It made me sweat. So this is amazing. She is criticizing Sarah Sanders for complaining about being thrown out of a restaurant. She says, but I'm gracious. I'm not like that. I'm not that petty. I'm just going to ban you from ever being on this program again as long as I live. So again, more of that hypocrisy you get on the left. Now here's Molly Hemingway again talking about Donald Trump's relationship with the media, and I think you'll find something to take away from this soundbite. Let's listen.
Donald Trump did not create distrust of the media. Distrust of the media helped create Donald Trump. And the media really need to get a handle on why so many Americans don't just dislike them, but loathe them. If the only way you can sort of defend media performances, or if you get really upset about Donald Trump criticizing the media, is if you think that the media are doing a good job. And the fact is, very few Americans actually think the media are doing a good job. A recent poll showed that 72% of Americans think that the media deliberately report fake, false, or misleading news. And I think the misleading thing is really significant there. It's not that people are just making up facts out of whole cloth, but the bias and the self-aggrandizement and the idiocy that people see in the media is frustrating them, and the media really need to take a hard look inside. Jim Acosta telling a woman that she needs to say certain words or else he's not going to stop yelling at her is not going to improve the relationship between the media and the American people.
You know, and she's right about this. 72% of the American people believe that the media deliberately report a distorted, false, or fake view of the news. People simply do not trust the talking snake media. And I think her point is a good one. You know, it wasn't that Donald Trump created the distrust of the media. I think in part one of the reasons that Donald Trump was elected is because he openly expressed his disgust with the mainstream media. And they was voicing the opinions and the feelings of millions of Americans when he did that. When he called them fake news, when he called them out on it, that resonated with the American people. They said, yeah, that's what I've been thinking about the media for years. Finally, a candidate for public office who's expressing my view of the media. You know, even the Republicans up to this point, they've always tried to play nice with the media. They've always tried to make nice with them. They've always tried to get along with them, even though every time they turned around, the media was skewering them, knifing them in the ribs. They were just too polite and too courteous to respond in kind. Donald Trump says, no, you hit me, I'm going to hit you back 10 times as hard. And the American people said, finally, somebody who sees the media the same way that I do. Now, so I think it's right to say that disgust with the media might have created Donald Trump, not the other way around. It's kind of like his view on immigration and building a wall. It resonated with the American people. They distrusted the media before he ever showed up, and he capitalized on that. He connected with that, and it wound up propelling him into the White House. Now, here's Tucker Carlson, clip 4, talking here about what we were chatting about earlier, this racism against white people. Let's listen.
Lydia Paul Green, the editor-in-chief of HuffPo, who is widely regarded by her peers as a moron, announced that criticism of Zhang is, quote, part of a deeply troubling trend of far-right agitators trying to get journalists fired. Far-right agitators, okay. But actually, we're not calling on Zhang to be fired. We're not liberals, so we don't believe that every person we disagree with ought to be crushed, including Sarah Zhang. We believe in free speech, even when it's reprehensible, maybe especially when it is. What we would like to see, though, is some honesty. Let's all stop lying for a minute. What Sarah Zhang said was wrong, but it was only shocking because she expressed it so clearly. In point of fact, her views are commonplace in the American establishment, maybe universal. Try to find a single government bureaucrat or college administrator or head of corporate HR who disagrees with the idea that people should be judged by the color of their skin and that some races are more virtuous and deserving than other races. They all think that, every one of them. And yet, remarkably, these very same people are the quickest to cry racism at the slightest provocation or for no reason at all. They think of themselves as arch enemies of racism. They get tattoos on their arm telling you that, and yet they're its chief purveyors. Deep, deep irony. How do they do that? Well, simple. They redefine the term. As Vice.com succinctly put it a couple of years ago, quote, it is literally impossible to be racist to a white person. Pretty much the entire left now takes that as a matter of faith. They deeply believe that. But what does that mean exactly? Is there really an entire race of people so repulsive, so morally repugnant that it is, quote, literally impossible to wrong them? You could do anything to people like that and not feel bad about it. In fact, why wouldn't you? They deserve it. They're not really human. That's the attitude. It's not hard to guess where ideas like that wind up. We've seen it. All of us should be afraid of it. All of us, regardless of color. There are plenty of examples in history of what happens when people start thinking this way. And they're all sad. It's awful. And yet this is the mindset the left has imposed on our country. It's an attitude designed to dehumanize the individual, to erase what makes each of us interesting and distinct and vital, and reduce us to faceless members of a group. It's totalitarian. We ought to resist it with everything that we have.
And he's right about that. On everything that he said in that column is right on the money. You know, and again, as we talked about with Dan Gainor, the people on the left, they think that racism is impossible for them, that they're not capable of racist attitudes because they're right. The way they see the world is right. It's perfect. There's no flaw in the way that they react. If people complain about the way they're treated, it is their fault. Even the people defending Jim Acosta trying to blame it on those that were criticizing him. It's their fault. So again, they never see any fault in themselves. They can continue to vilify, demonize Donald Trump, demonize his supporters, ridicule them, think of us and speak of us as toothless hicks. and we complain about it, they think we deserve it, because that's what we are. We are some kind of subhuman species. And so they have no trouble just teeing off on us. All right, number to call to join the conversation, 888-589-8840.
To sharpen the biblical worldview of Christians and to share the good news of Jesus Christ. That is the mission of the Christian Worldview radio program. I'm host David Wheaton, inviting you to join us this Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, as we discuss all matters of life and faith from a decidedly biblical perspective. The Christian Worldview, Saturday mornings at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, right here on American Family Radio.
Caring about the direction our nation is headed is one thing. Doing something about it is another. The Values Voter Summit in Washington, D.C. is the premier gathering for equipping Christian conservatives for returning the culture to one that values human life, encourages families, and defends religious liberty. Plan now to join other values voters on September 21st through the 23rd. Learn more and register at valuesvotersummit.org. valuesvotersummit.org. Sponsored in part by AFA Action.
Netflix continues to ignore the outcry about 13 Reasons Why. The American Family Association, along with Parents Television Council and several other pro-family groups, have reached out to the streaming service urging the cancellation of their program. Netflix has not even responded to our letter. Instead, they released an even more vile Season 2 and are producing Season 3. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings says their program is engaging and that it fosters discussion of taboo topics like suicide and sexual assault. But at what cost? 14-year-old Anna Bright and several other teens have committed suicide after watching the show. Hastings calls our objections propaganda. Does he feel the profitability of his company is worth more than the lives damaged or lost because of his show? Please sign our petition to Netflix, learn more, and share our action alert when you visit afa.net. And pray Reed Hastings will recognize the dangers of 13 Reasons Why.
It's Friday. That means on Exploring the Word, it is Fire Away Friday at 3 o'clock Central Time, where Alex and I will join you as you call in and ask your question. This is Bert Harper. Get ready to fire away. Thank you for listening to Exploring the Word, especially on Fire Away Friday.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Focal Point. Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to this last segment of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Free for All Friday, talk about anything that's been in the news over the course of this past week. Anything that's been in the news over the course of this past week, 888-589-8840 is the number to call, 888-589-8840. We've been following this Mueller thing. I had a whole bunch of stuff on that today. We just didn't get to it. But the Mueller thing is going nowhere. This Manafort trial, the judge is dressing down the Mueller prosecution. It's not a crime in this country to be wealthy. It's not a crime in this country to live a lavish lifestyle. So put away the pictures of his coach. Crime eminently, I'm not interested in that. It has nothing to do. And of course, there's nothing at all to do. This whole Manafort trial has zero to do with the campaign. Nothing. There's no connection between what he's being accused of and on trial for and Trump-Russia collusion. There's nothing there. But that's what Mueller was tasked to investigate. He's got nothing on that. I mean, it just starts to grind your gears after a while to see how far astray from anything remotely resembling rationality this whole thing is. Anyway, here's Chris Cuomo talking to Senator Dick Durbin. And Chris Cuomo, I'm just going to play the question for you because I think he actually comes up with something pretty good here.
Well, I'm going to wait for Mueller's conclusion, and I have a lot of faith in him. I'll stand by his conclusion, whether it exonerates the president or finds him guilty of, or at least accuses him of being guilty of some misconduct. When it comes to the impeachment process, I can just tell you I've been through that with President Clinton. I do not consider it lightly, and should it go forward, I would be sitting on the jury in the United States Senate.
Isn't that one of the best arguments in favor of wrapping this up? If Mueller doesn't have really heavy-duty ammunition against the president, and impeachment is largely a political numbers game, why wouldn't he wrap it up if he doesn't have something to actually indict and charge on? And impeachment is all but impossible because of the numbers in Congress right now. Where is the progress in all of this?
Where is the progress in all of this? Where is the purpose in all of this? So now Chris Cuomo is saying, look, it's time for Mueller to wrap this charade up. This is a farce now. It's descending into political and legal farce. Chris Cuomo, of all people, saying it's time for Mueller to wrap this up because it's clear that he's got absolutely nothing. Impeachment's going to go nowhere. Even if it could get voted on in the House, the Senate is never going to vote to convict and remove Donald Trump. Not going to happen, not in this lifetime. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's grab a call from Charles in Savannah, Georgia. Charles, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hi, Brian. Glad to get an opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you.
We'll miss you guys in your second hour in the future.
Thank you.
But I enjoy your program. I just want to speak to this business with the media. You know, I was in media broadcasting several years back, and one of the first things we learned was about three basic principles: quality, integrity, and confirmation. And what we see today is very, very shallow in a lot of those particular basic ingredients. There's no quality to speak of. Integrity, Jim Acosta's that sign of integrity was lost. And the confirmation, they used very little, if any at all, to confirm any story. And used to, it was you had to have at least three sources of confirmation before anything went to air or print. Those days are gone.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll just run. I mean, everybody now wants to be the first one to break the story. You know, and you have an instant news universe where news on Twitter can break instantaneously. They want to be the first one to get it. And that kind of haste, as they say, makes waste. They get it wrong a lot of the time. Well, thank you, Charles. Good insights from your own career in broadcasting. Let's go to Walter in Oklahoma. Walker, welcome. What's on your mind? Or Walter, welcome.
Yes. I was just a comment about the Ten Commandments in Oklahoma. There was a deal where they wanted to put a statue of Satan next to the Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
And, of course, they say, no, we wouldn't have that because we can't have a statue, you know. And then I talked to several people, and people are freaking me out. They say, well, why not?
Yeah.
Or either, well, you gave them a voice, so you have to give the other side a voice. And we owe Satan nothing. That was my comment. You know, I'm just appalled when I come up, you know, when people say that. Well, why not? Why can't we have a statue saying that in the Ten Commandments? Obviously, they don't know what the Ten Commandments say. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, well, it says, you know, you're right. Commandment number 3, have no other gods before me. Well, Satan is another god, god of this world and all that. Appreciate the call, Walter. You know, and one of the things this points out is that we are never going to resolve the tension that we have in the religious liberty arena until we figure out that this country was founded as a Christian nation, that Christianity was the established religion of the colonies. You got a Supreme Court justice saying that. Everybody everywhere recognized that Christianity was the established religion of the American colonies. Now, you had different flavors of Christianity. You had Quakers, and you had Episcopalians, and you had Congregationalists, and you had Baptists, and you had Methodists, but everybody was a Christian. Remember, de Tocqueville said, Christian morality is everywhere the same. You know, in the First Amendment, as I've been at pains to argue, according to Joseph Story, it's not my idea, it's Joseph Story's idea, the First Amendment only deals with protecting the religious liberty of Christians. That's all it's about. They're not even dealing with anything else to make sure there's no rivalry among the various Christian sects. All right, let's grab a call from Nathan in Lawrence County, Tennessee. Nathan, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say that I don't believe that I've ever agreed with Nancy Pelosi on anything. If she said sun was shining, I'm afraid I'd go get an umbrella. But, you know, I'd have to agree with her philosophy on something. You know, she's the very one that said that we had to approve Obamacare to find out what's in it. Well, I think we probably ought to adopt that philosophy with Judge Kavanaugh. I think we ought to elect him so that Nancy and Chucky and all their friends can find out what he believes. Yeah. That's my comment. I appreciate it. I'm at work today, so I have to get back to my rocket.
All right. Okay, Nathan,
Brian.
take care of them. Don't aim any of them our direction. And, John Cornyn out there, and I won't play we don't have time to play the soundbite, but John Cornyn out there saying, look, it's impossible to satisfy the document requests of the Democrats. They want to get every document that passed across Brett Kavanaugh's desk when he was the chief of staff, secretary to the chief of staff of President Bush. Well, that's hundreds of thousands of them. No way you can get to the bottom of that. It's just a stalling tactic. 15 Democrats have said it doesn't matter what documents we find, we are not going to vote for this guy. So I agree with our last caller, with Nathan, that we ought to just nominate and confirm Brett Kavanaugh, and then Nancy Pelosi can find out what's in him. All right, let's go to Florence in Logansport, Indiana. Florence, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
I hope the president shuts it down. And you know what? I think if they would dock that Senate and things a third of their paycheck for stolen, they might get somewhere.
Okay, now tell me again about their paychecks, Florence. I didn't quite get that.
When they don't do things and they have to go out and come back to get a budget passed, cut their paycheck instead of giving full paycheck.
Yeah. Well, if you, you got a point there, Florence. You pay these guys by the hour. I mean, they don't do anything. I mean, we were talking about this the other day. Paul Ryan says we can't shut down the government. It'll keep us from being able to get our agenda passed. And I said, what agenda? What are you talking about? What are you guys even working on? There's no discernible agenda here that I can detect. All right, Florence, good call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Mary. Mary, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Well, I'm not the type of person that can use a computer or anything, but I was saying like a Facebook tweet or whatever, all of them had to release all their paperwork and show the government what is actually going through. We probably have a lot of people arrested for what they are threatening to do the right. And I just feel like, I don't know, I'm just so upset of what's going on. There's so much hatred in the country. And it's like the Ten Commandments down there where you guys are at. Okay, has anybody been able to rescue that and take it and put it somewhere else, like on a private place or another business that they cannot come in and take it up again?
Well,
I'd also like to know
Go ahead,
about
Mary.
the police officer in Colorado Springs, if he survived the shooting this week.
Yeah.
And thank you, Brian, and have a beautiful weekend.
Okay, Mary, thank you, and you yourself as well. And I think Mary's reflecting the agitation that a lot of us feel, a lot of us experience that. A lot of us are, deeply disturbed about what's happening to our country, the direction that things are going. And I think one thing that's absolutely critical for us to do is to be sure that we keep our heads and that we do not let the other side get to us. I mean, we need to know what they're up to. We need to know what they're about. We need to know what they're saying. We need to know what they're trying to do. Well, we can't let them get to us. We have to maintain our composure. We have to maintain a sense of steadiness, a sense of resolve, a sense of purpose. Our job is to stand for the truth against whoever comes against it. Our job is to find out whatever gap God wants us to stand in and stand in that gap. That's what God wants us to do. So let's resolve to do that. Let's be people of peace. Let's be people of steadiness. Do not let the left get to us, because remember, we are on the winning team. We are fighting a winnable war. Let's never forget that. Let's stay on task and stay focused on the job in front of us. To this end, we always pray for you, that our God may make you worthy of his calling and may fulfill every resolve for good and every work of faith by his power. Bow low before God, stand tall before man, stand in the gap. Never forget, we're fighting a winnable war. See you on Monday.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.